In a moment, Barry Rogers, OAM and Australian Light Horse Director, will describe the charge from a horseman's viewpoint. However, for a moment, I want to reflect on the history and importance of this strategic town in the midst of the Negev desert. It was in this region that Abraham in biblical times made or cut a covenant with a nearby tribe. Therefore, this place, Beersheba, is called the Well of the Oath. Beersheba's importance has always been due to its reliable water supply and in times past its proximity to trade routes which connected the Far East to Europe. The land of Israel, Eretz Israel, was always geopolitically significant, sandwiched as it was between various imperial power blocks, empires to the north and empires to the south. When the Ottoman Turkish Empire took control over this region in 1517, the people of Israel were mostly in exile, and the land of Israel basically a political backwater. When war began in 1914, Turkey, the Ottoman Turkish Empire, sided with the German and Austro-Hungarian empires. Plans for the dismemberment of the Turkish Empire were then made prior to the battle at the Dardanelles. But these plans were premature, as the Turks defeated the Allies at Gallipoli, and they then turned their attention to capturing the Suez Canal. To protect the Suez Canal, the Egyptian Expeditionary Force was formed, composed of the Australian Light Horse and the New Zealand Mounted Rifles, as well as British infantry and cavalry. Cameleers and airmen were also involved in this new force. By the end of 1916, the Egyptian Expeditionary Force had defeated the Turks in the Sinai, thereby creating a buffer zone for the Suez Canal. But then, providentially, a new government was formed in Britain, led by Prime Minister David Lloyd George and Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour. Lloyd George desired a victory in the East, so in early 1917, the Egyptian Expeditionary Force extended its campaign into Palestine, Turkish Palestine of the time, with Jerusalem as a major goal. But they were twice defeated at Gaza in March and April 1917, necessitating the appointment of a new commander named General Edmund Allenby. Meanwhile, utilizing, among other things, valuable information supplied by an underground Jewish spy ring named Millie, a plan was devised by General Chetwode to strike at the weaker end of the Turkish line at Beersheba. The Turks had numerous trenches on the western approaches of Beersheba, but had fewer defences on the east, where we are located today, except the domineering Tel El Saba, Beersheba of Abraham's time. He proposed an attack from that direction by the mostly Anzac mounted force, and against the western trenches by the British infantry. Part of this plan included fooling the Turkish and German leadership into believing the main assault would be at Gaza again and not at Beersheba. But in fact, it was the other way around. The major attack would be here at Beersheba. Beersheba needed to be captured in one day, with its precious water wells intact. That day was the 31st of October 1917, also known as Reformation Day. In the last days of October, Anzac and British troops moved towards their positions. The final capture of Beersheba was left to General Chauvel and the Desert Mounted Corps. Then, early on the 31st of October, British infantry attacked the Turkish trenches, and after heavy and hand-to-hand fighting, by early afternoon, they had achieved all of their objectives. New Zealanders and some Australians attacked the strategic Tel El Saba, the Tel Saba of Abraham's time. And by mid-afternoon, they finally captured this strategic location. Following the earlier British successes, the Turks decided to withdraw from Beersheba, but before doing so, they determined to destroy all of the water wells, those precious, precious water wells. General Chauvel needed to move quickly to save those wells. He forthwith released the 4th Brigade of the Australian Light Horse to charge into Beersheba. This was a gutsy decision because these men were mounted infantry and had never trained for a charge at entrenched opposition. At about 4:30 in the afternoon, upwards of 600 Australian horsemen came onto the plain some 6 kilometres east of Beersheba, and you're looking in that very direction now. And despite being under fire from artillery and aircraft, they gallantly rode forward. They rode so fast they went under the Turkish artillery fire. They then cleared the Turkish trenches, dismounted and encountered hand-to-hand combat. Some men rode directly into the town and were able to stop the destruction of the wells. By about 6 p.m, Beersheba had fallen. At about the same time, the War Cabinet in London voted for the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. Few are aware of the fact that at almost the same time as the gallant men from Australia charged in and completed the work set up by the British and the New Zealanders, at that very time, men in Britain were making this decision, which later became known as the Balfour Declaration. The victory at Beersheba opened the door to the conquest of the land of Israel and the ultimate defeat of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. The dismemberment of the Ottoman Empire resulted in time in the establishment of modern Turkey and of 5 independent Arab nations and of one very, very small Jewish nation named Israel. With this perspective in mind, we can see that the Battle of Beersheba was much more than just a military event. Thank you.
A 100 years ago, they would have come at a mad rush from about that distance. They started about 6 kilometres out, coming in a walk, then a trot, then a canter, then a gallop. Just as well they're not galloping. But today, they're coming at a walk, because they're walking on hallowed ground. But later, if you hang around, they're going to come a little bit faster. But for this particular episode, they're coming at a walk. For us, this has been a ride for peace. And we're carrying the Australian flag, the New Zealand flag, and we carry also with great pride the Israeli flag. As our host nation, they have facilitated our journey here at many different levels and been an outstanding support for us, and we're deeply humbled when we see the enormous resources that have been put into making this event happen today. The Israeli flag also symbolises something of the great shared history our two nations have. Our ride through the Negev desert over the past 3 days, following in the footsteps of our forebears, has been a great honour, and our journey through the desert has reminded us of their perseverance. And as we're riding across this hallowed piece of ground, we are brought face to face with their courage. As we have walked among the gravestones of the beautifully kept Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery here in Beersheba, we have reflected on their sacrifice with a sense of gratitude. The defeat of the Ottoman Empire, as Calvin pointed out a while ago, was a watershed moment for several nations. The formation of the State of Israel has been a 2,000-year-old dream for the people of Israel to return to their historical homeland. Indeed, the national anthem, The Hope, refers to that hope. We've enjoyed our interactions with thousands of children along the road that we have been taking. I'd like to, just before we come to the end of this charge, as we walk in respectfully, later on you'll see some action. I'll reflect on, because this is a ride for peace for us, I want to reflect on the words of that great champion of peace, that great champion of social justice, Dr. Martin Luther King. And I can say it no better. And I quote, "Peace for Israel means security, and we must stand with all our might to protect its right to exist, its territorial integrity. I see Israel as one of the great outposts of democracy in the world, and a marvellous example of what can be done. Peace for Israel means security, and that security must be a reality." Unquote. God bless Israel and all who live within her borders. They're coming up to form a troop line, and in a moment some from the colour party will come forward to receive a medallion from the dignitaries on stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Australian Light Horse Cavalry. before to distribute the medals to the Light Horse commanders, I am honored to invite the dignitaries to the front of the stage. I ask 4 commanders to ride up to the platform to be awarded a medal commemorating the 100 years since the liberation of Beersheba.
A war cry.
And Don Moore, representative of New Zealand.
Tom Dawson, OAM, RFD, former commanding officer of the 2nd 14th Light Horse Regiment. Too sure about it. Arthur DeMay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Dawson. And last but not least, Don Moore, representative of New Zealand. Let's hear it for all these brave men.
Parade Commander, your parade.
Another jet.
You hang around, you'll see a little more action.
Ready, wait, laying down.
Venga, non state qui verso fuoco. Lasciamo piegare il sconto da noi.
Ow!
Stop. Yeah, so it's due too.
Our wonderful horses are supplied by Ilan Pellig and the riding experience in the Carmel Mountains. Thank you, Ilan Pellig, for these horses. We also owe a great debt to Ezra Pimentel of the Historical Society, who's been our man on the ground to put all this together. Thank you, Ezra.
Eso es justo esto. Mira, la mano de juez.
It would be remiss of me not to mention the enormous contribution of the Jewish National Fund and to Amit Reingold and the mayor of this astounding city, Rubik Danilitsevich. Congratulations for putting on such an amazing show. We are deeply humbled by the effort that you've gone to make this happen today.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for arriving today. A few thanks.
For others, as did our Australian soldiers on this soil a century ago. Let us take our leave respectfully with the blessing of Almighty God. Amen.
מי שברך אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב הוא יברך את אזרחי אוסטרליה ואת תושבי ארץ ישראל הקדושה בעומדנו כאן מולדתנו ארץ האבות וכולנו התקווה להתברך באומץ הלב והעוז כפי שניחנו ממש כאן חיילי אוסטרליה לפני 100 שנה. הבה נסיים בברכתו של הקדוש ברוך הוא לשלום ולהצלחה. עושה שלום במרומיו. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. your time.